Welcome to this week's episode of Have I Got Views For You, where I'm joined on the couch by Angela Haggerty from Common Space, and we're going to be looking back over the opinion pieces written over the week. So first of all, I guess we're looking at fracking has been a big issue in the news again. What's kind of the opinions on that?
Yep, well, this has been a big one since the SNP conference last week, and there's been a lot of talk in the media, and we've had an opinion piece in from Siobhan Tolland, and she says headline, "To the SNP on fracking, beware of multinationals bearing gifts." And this is in reference to INEOS, obviously, and the controversy at the SNP conference was that INEOS had paid for a stall there, and they are embarking on a big PR drive at the moment because obviously they have interest in fracking and unconventional gas extraction, and they are trying to lobby the Scottish Government to allow them to do that, and they're facing a lot of opposition from SNP members, and so this is a bit of a charm offensive going on right now. They're holding a lot of local meetings around communities as well, which I know there's been some protests at, so it's part of quite a big thing. So Siobhan says, INEOS has a strong and aggressive strategy to get its own way. It has spent a lot of time and effort claiming that fracking is good for the economy and is the single sustainable option for future gas exploration. This is important because against a world of dwindling energy resources, fracking is promoted as the sole viable option for the future. And Siobhan basically goes on to make the point that the way that they are going to position this is that for a future independent Scotland to be economically strong and viable, you would need to allow things like fracking as the only way. So she suspects that that's the kind of strategy that they're going to try and be pushing in the media and to members of the SNP and other parties that are opposing them on this. And I noticed, Stephen, on Twitter, because I'm always on Twitter, that you shared an article yesterday that said much the same sort of thing about independent Scotland and fracking, didn't it?
Absolutely. It did seem that I think it's the CEO of INEOS has came forward and said that the route to an independent Scotland lies through fracking. It'd essentially be a second oil boom. We give Scotland the finances it needs to, go its own way. And it does seem like they are trying to frame it in that way because they know that there is a popular movement in Scotland just now for independence, as you were saying. And I'm hoping people don't really fall for it because there's not really much point in having an independent Scotland if our water is poisonous and all the other problems that fracking can pose and that we need to be talking about moving forward. It does seem like it is a little bit of a cheap ploy. It's like they've identified a route to try and bring people onto
the question
is
cause. Whether they'll be successful in that, because INEOS, of course, is a huge company with a lot of experience in lobbying, a lot of experience in PR, a lot of experience in talking around communities, people to their view on things. At the moment, there does seem to be a lot of opposition in Scotland to fracking. So the question is, will INEOS be able to overcome that?
Work away at it. And I mean, there is the question as well of, I think, obviously the SNP have placed a moratorium on it just now, but that's not a ban. And I think there was a motion put forward at the conference to strengthen and make it a ban, and it was voted against. So I mean, there is definitely still scepticism about immediately just stopping fracking, and there's definitely a route in there if people are not careful. I
think what's concerned a lot of people is that INEOS don't seem too frightened about it. They've come across like they've been quite confident since the moratorium was announced by the Scottish Government, which has led some people, a lot of campaign groups for example, to be speculating, has there been some talks going on behind the scenes here that has given INEOS some confidence that they will have a future in Scotland with this practice.
Well, they have started testing already. They started drilling some parts of Scotland just to test the ground and see if it's, ready to go really. I mean really it's going to be down to the SNP's members to keep the SNP in line here, I think, because it seems like a lot of membership are very opposed to it, and they're going to want to be pushing the party to oppose it as well.
So that was quite a popular piece this week. Another piece that we have, which is part of a series, it's Jimmy Sterling's DWP Diary, and so I would urge everybody just to go on and have a look at this and follow. It's not a big opinion piece like the other ones that we do. It's just a diary, and this is Jimmy Sterling. He's 61. He's a graphic designer and he's unemployed. He receives partial job seekers allowance, but he's on a part pension as well. He has a small pension, so they deduct the excess from his job seekers allowance. However, at the age of 61, they're telling him that he has to do the community work programme. and he's kind of locked in a bit of a battle with the DWP at the moment over that. He's happy to do it. If he has to do it, then he will, although he has to do the full amount of hours. I think it's something like 30 hours a week, and he doesn't even get full job seekers allowance. But he's been exercising his rights to not have to sign certain paperwork that's associated with this, which he's entitled to do. However, the job centre then threatened to sanction him, and he's just locked in this constant battle with the job centre over sanctions and whether he's going to get paid the next time. Every time he signs on, is he going to get paid? So this is just, it's an insight into, we're always talking about sanctions, we're always talking about benefits, but this is an insight into someone's daily life with it, everything that they have to go through, all the paperwork, every letter that they receive, every day that they're frightened that they're going to lose their money, and the emotional toll that takes on people, the stress that it places on people. So it's something that we're doing weekly instalments with, so please go on commonspace.scot and have a look. The next piece is from James McEnany, why the closure of News Shaft is a wake-up call for the New Scotland. And this is News Shaft, the popular podcast, broadcast, new media outlet, has closed its doors, unfortunately, because of financial problems. They just couldn't keep it going anymore. And James says that this is something we should all be concerned about. He says, with support, Scotland's new media could achieve something incredible. Without it, the entire project will fail. So what happens next? In the end, it all comes down to this. If you, like so many others, have issues with the mainstream media, then you should consider offering some financial backing to the alternatives. A new Scotland cannot be built without them. What was your, we are new media. Stephen, you're new media, Common Space is new media. What was your thoughts when you heard the news about News Shaft?
I was really sad to hear that the guys were going. Yeah. Their work's been fantastic at News Shaft, but even before that, during the referendum, the Dateline Scotland was fantastic, really funny, brought something new to the debate. It's a really sad thing that they've had to kind of shut up, but it's a problem that we're kind of all facing, and it was going to be a question of how long we could all continue going, and with all of us asking for people to kind of give a little bit of money when they could to keep everything functioning.
It's not a long-term sustainable model.
No, we do need to find an alternative.
That's the
way
big
to do it. It's just finding what that could be. Really.
Do you think in the future that you're going to see more of the new media outlets either folding, or maybe not folding, but just starting to join up with each other a little bit more? Not necessarily all becoming the same thing, but for example, we work together and we work with the guys at Indie Live, and we work with Bella Caledonia, and so it's kind of like sharing resources a lot of the time. Some of us have resources that others don't have, so we can achieve a lot more if we work together a little bit. But it's really important to keep the individual brands going as well, because we all have kind of different editorial lines and objectives, and I don't think it's a healthy thing to just try and lump all that together as some big challenge to the mainstream. I don't think
I completely agree. If we kind of lump it all together, all we're really doing is falling into some of the same traps that a lot of the mainstream press does already, which is having essentially one editor with a kind of top-down approach to controlling different stories instead of having a variety of places that you can go to get different opinions, which is a really good thing, I think, and has really led to good debate in Scotland. I do see there being probably more of a, like you say, we already collaborate, but something a little bit stronger in terms of maybe people come together, slightly more official connections, just to try and pool resources, share and pool resources, pooling and sharing, to keep going, really, because we do need to find a sustainable route to move forward.
We do. But in the meantime, if you would like to donate, please do. We really, really could do with the support, and we're very lucky
to the Left Scotland or to Common Space.
Yes, to both of them. But we are very lucky. We do get a lot of support from people as it is, but we need that support. Certainly for Common Space, we employ full-time staff. We have a team of journalists, and they need that regular income coming in every month, or they can't do it. We can't expect people to put themselves in that kind of financial position. So please do support us. We are working very, very hard.
I kind of feel like you're just trying to steal my audience away right now. Just a bit threatened.
Competition.
Yeah.
It's the competition.
Right.
It's rising. Right, the next piece then is from Yvonne Ridley. She wrote a couple of pieces for us this week, but I've honed in on this one because I think this will resonate a lot with a lot of yours. This is titled "Be Radical, Jeremy Corbyn, expel Tony Blair from the Labour Party." And this has been written after a memo came out just recently that indicated that Tony Blair was preparing for war behind the scenes while he was publicly saying that they were looking for a diplomatic solution ahead of the war in Iraq. And I think at the time people did really believe that a diplomatic solution might still be a possibility. There were a lot of protests in the UK, huge protests in the UK, and I remember at the time, I remember being on those protests and thinking that there was still a shot. Now maybe that was naive, I was younger, maybe other people realised that of course it was going to go to war, but I do remember there was a feeling of there's a chance that if there are enough people in the streets, this was not just happening in the UK, it was throughout Europe, that it might be able to prevent this from happening. So the news that Blair had his mind well made up before that will be of great interest to people. So Yvonne says, talking of Corbyn, he won the leadership with a higher percentage of the vote than Blair did in 1994, taking 59.5% of the vote compared to 57% for Mr Blair. With that sort of mandate, expelling Blair for bringing the party into disrepute should be a popular move, and he would not be the first to be expelled over Iraq. George Galloway, the then Glasgow Kelvin MP, was kicked out by Blair in October 2003. Come on, Corbyn, what are you waiting for? So you wonder whether that's a possibility under the radical Corbyn. However, that said, I don't think he's apologised for the Iraq war yet, and he said
he did say he was going to
that he would do that. So, what do you think, Stephen? Do you think there's a case? I think there's a case for more than expelling him from the Labour Party.
Yeah, I think there is.
That's somewhere to start.
I mean, yeah, I think it's this week as well that a new report, leaked documents from the Labour Party showing how people view them across the UK came out as well. Basically saying a lot of the problem was that they were either viewed to be weak or a less effective version of the Tories. And so, so I mean, doing something quite radical of basically saying, here's where we were, this this figurehead of what a lot of people view to be the problem of the party, to just disown and move away from, would be probably very beneficial, because one of the other parts as well is saying that they feel Labour need to accept that they messed up the economy, and that was under Blair's government.
But it would be quite an unprecedented thing to do for the leader of a party to expel a former Prime Minister. I mean,
we're in an unprecedented time.
Taking unprecedented to a new level, I think.
I mean, if you think about unprecedented, we had recently the Labour conference in Scotland with protesters outside of it, when Labour are neither in power or going to be in power, and yet people were protesting outside of them. It's a very strange thing to be happening when you think about it. So I mean that's unprecedented, and maybe something unprecedented is what's needed to change how people view the Labour Party, and to understand that they are taking a new route and they're moving away from all the problems that people view them as having.
Oh well, it remains to be seen, Stephen. I don't know though. I think there may be some over-optimism in there, but we shall see. We'll see. It's also a lot of what Corbyn is up against within the party rather than Corbyn himself. But anyway, moving on. Ian Dunn this week. This has been a fantastic rant. I love rants. I love to rant, and I love reading other people's rants. And this is pretty epic. Ian Dunn, whinge as though you live in the early days of a bitter nation. So this is following the Rugby World Cup. I don't know very much about rugby, and I didn't watch the game, but I understand that it was very heartbreaking and tense, and there was a bad refereeing decision, and etc. etc.
We were just so close to finally not being a Scottish team.
But apparently after that there was a bit of a hoo-ha on Twitter, and everybody was falling out and they were calling each other names or something like that. I struggled to follow it, to be honest with you. It became so... Twitter often is crazy. But anyways, Ian says, for Scotland to have played so well for so long yet have it snatched away at the end was heartbreaking. And then I got over it. I didn't go online and swear at strangers because I am not a child. I didn't whine on and on about the referee because I'm not a child. And I did not dream up a fantasy that it was all down to a vast anti-Scottish conspiracy because I'm not, are you getting this yet, a child. And he goes on to say, whether it be unionists horrified, shrieking about a non-existent SNP one-party state, or nationalists mewling frantically about supposed media bias, Scotland is becoming a nation of self-indulgent complainers. that went down well with our readers.
Obviously.
But I mean, it has to be, I don't know if you noticed this on Twitter, and it might just be a little bit of boredom creeping in because we had the excitement of Indie Ref, and then not long after that you had the general election, and it's, you know, there's been so much going on. Then it starts to quieten down, and I don't know if it's just a bit of boredom that's creeping in that's making people a little bit more maybe whiny, whereas before it was all about hope and it was about vision and all of that, and now it's a bit more about kind of we're all arguing and kind of griping with each other a little bit. So I don't know if there's something in what Ian's saying. What do you think?
No, I'd agree actually. I think before we had a real kind of platform, when we had a problem, we were like, okay, this is awful, what can I do? Well, I can go out and I can campaign against it, or I can go out and I can do something about it. And I can see how, with some of that being removed, a lot of it has just shifted into the online sphere, and it's just people...
Yeah, it's kind of like frustration.
Yeah, almost.
Of knowing that it's going to be a while yet before they get to see the change that they want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely there is a bit of a darker tone online recently, which I find really frustrating because, I mean, such a big part of what we were talking about before was building a better Scotland with better politics and better debate. And for it to so quickly slide back, not completely obviously, but a little part of it to slide back so quickly to being very tribal, to being very closed down, is a little bit frustrating because it seems to be really the antithesis of everything we were talking about just last year, and everything that we wanted for politics in Scotland. You know, to be able to openly discuss ideas without, you know, everyone piling in to shout abuse, but rather to actually have an open discussion about it, even if you disagreed. Yeah. So
but it really is a great rant. You should go and have a look. And rant back if you like. If anyone wants to rebut that, be more than happy to hear from you. Angela@common.scot.
Yeah, the common space is not for whingers, but it is for ranters. So, you know, if you can rant back at one another, then that's it.
So the last piece this week is from Gary Elliott, and he said the food industry is inefficient and wasteful. It's time to get back to our roots. And this is something Gary's written about before, and he's promoting the idea that we should maybe be looking a bit more at growing our own stuff and stop relying on heavy food industry, because it wastes a lot and it is not good for the environment. He says if people can at least grow some of their own food, if children can grow up experiencing homegrown food, then what we can do is move to a more realistic culture of food appreciation in which our expectations of cosmetic presentation are radically reduced. If that can reduce food waste and raise income for global farmers, then that makes a real material difference. I don't grow my own food. I struggle to cook. I don't think I could take care of a plant, never mind grow my own food, but I don't know, Stephen, maybe you're a bit different.
Yeah, definitely.
You grow your own food?
No. Well, yeah, I mean, I completely agree with growing your own food. I think it's an amazing thing to do. I live in a tenement block. It's not really an option for me.
I think it is. I think the problem is just lack of knowledge and education on how people go. Some of these things probably are a little bit more simple than people might expect them to be. Yeah. And it's interesting to read this piece if you go on Common Space and have a look, because he talks a lot about the stuff that he does and how much money he saves, and it really is significant. You know, I think that could be something of interest for families.
Food is an area that we don't really discuss much. Yeah. It's a strange one, like when we're talking about where we supply our energy from and everything else, wanting to find good sustainable ways. Food is something that we do tend to overlook a little bit. Yeah. Because it's just convenient, it's just in the shop, and we don't necessarily look at where it's came from.
Yeah, we don't really consider the industry itself.
Or kind of even wider things like that, like, you know, cutting down how much meat you eat actually has a massive impact, even if it's just a small cut down. It has a big impact overall. In terms of like how much waste there is and how much sustainable land is used and everything else. Yeah, I mean, it's a discussion we really should be having, and
that's good, because we've got Gary Elliott on Common Space
having that discussion
quite regularly. Has that discussion.
Absolutely, especially because with allotments as well. I mean, I say I'm living in a tenement block, but you can get an allotment.
Yeah, although I think Gary mentioned that in the piece, and he said that there's some places where the waiting list to get an allotment is ridiculous. He said there is interest in these things, but it's just access to land that people don't have. Yeah. So it ties into a lot of other things. It's quite a good thing to be thinking about. And that's us. That was pretty much the gist of it on Common Space this week.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's really everything from Have I Got Views for you for this week. Angela will be joining me again next week. We'll be looking at next week's views and opinions. Following on from your feedback, Have I Got Views For You will be launching it as a podcast next week, so you can listen to it when you're on the bus or wherever else you listen to podcasts. But for this week, that's us done, so thank you for watching.